Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-examination and identity architecture. When we started with the journey of self-discovery. And what that is returning to your true, authentic self, returning to that place where you discover your original blueprint, your original manuscript, the way you are, your personality, before it was captured and shaped. What we have learned is that who we are, unless we have really gone through that journey of reshifting, of changing, or of discovering our true self, we are really functioning on inherited beliefs shaped by society, culture, religion, family, academics, a slew of external influences that shape who we are. And in many cases, we come to a place where we don't really function in our authenticity simply because the traits that's been attributed to us, they're not ours originally. They are traits, they are expectations, impressions, perceptions, concepts that people have of who we should be. And that is shaped from a little girl, from a little baby. That is shaped in us. And then we grow that way. If we don't understand the dynamics of it, some people get into, they come down with PSTD, a whole bunch, anxiety, depression, and things of that nature simply because they have not discovered their true selves, and they're trying to dig in to find who they are. And if they don't know the mechanics of discovering or unpacking that truth of themselves, then you just go through life on autopilot. You just go through life being what others expect you to be. Before I continue that, though, I want to share with you what happened to me this week. A couple of days ago, I was at the grocery store picking up some items, and there was this aisle, and this gentleman, this young man, was in the aisle. We were both alone in the aisle, and he looked at me and he said, "Hi, how are you?" Big smile, and he just lit up when he saw me. And he says, "Hi, how are you?" So I looked at him, non-reactive. I didn't respond simply because I don't know him. And he said, "I know you." He said, I know you. Now, he had his ear pods in his ears, and I'm assuming he was on another call, or on a phone call or something. So I said, Are you talking to me?" He said, "Yes, I know you." So immediately I tried to scan my brain to figure out, well, where do I know this guy from? Was it from some kind of a business meeting or network marketing or something? And I just could not come up with where, if his face seemed familiar. He said, "I know you." He said, "I've seen you on TV." Imagine that. I'm like, well, I do stream a weekly show and it shows up on different platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. He said, "Yes, that's it. That's where I know you from." He said, "And I love your show." So I said, "Wow, that's really amazing. I'm just happy to meet a fan." He said, "Yes, I love your show." To me, that was, of course, we don't walk around looking for validation, and he wasn't like validating me. It wasn't about me. It was about the things or whatever it is that he garnered from what I share. And that to me was just so fascinating, because here I am, and I never claimed to, celebrity status or anything, because I just go about my daily business. And when I come to my show, this is my place that I just love sharing with as many people as tune into this show. But that reaction was just really, what it says to me is that And of course I know that, I know that people watch the show, some respond and some watch it in silence, because sometimes the things that I share are a little controversial, polemic. They're out of the norm, simply because that's how I think. Not even outside of the box. We don't have a box at all from which we launch. So there are people that watch it in silence, and they don't want to reveal themselves, especially people that are in certain groups and so forth. So anyway, I thought that was quite fascinating, because here I am minding my own business, and he looked at me and he's like, I know you. It was really interesting, because I thought, because I had never seen this person at all. Never. But anyway, so that was my experience a couple of days ago in the grocery store. And it just tells you that wherever you are, you just want to, you just I don't even want to say you want to be a good person, because that's neither here nor there. You just want to give your best to people wherever you are. If you're out and situation, things may happen, you just want to treat people with dignity and respect and so forth. So but to see that kind of address toward me was just really significant, and it just to tell you the truth, it was like a shot of dopamine, because it was something unexpected and something so profound uh, that's ever happened to me, having to do with my show. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and I wanted to share that with you. Going back to this journey of self-examination and uh, identity architecture. As I shared earlier, uh, we started with the journey of self discovery, and that is really remembering, returning to our original self. But because we have inherited a lot of stuff, from external sources, a lot of ideas, a lot of everything that have shaped who we are, sometimes we come to normalize certain things in our lives. And sadly, it shouldn't be that way, because once you come to realize the person that you are, and once you come to appreciate your value, your worth, and really love the person that you are, with no criticism, no judgment, no shame, none of that, just simply loving the person that you are, and allowing yourself to evolve, to grow, to develop. And the more you start living from the truth that the truth about you. But one thing that I noticed, and I kind of went to research that a little bit, people that live off of breadcrumbs. And it's something that we don't even think about. Breadcrumbs are all over the place. Imagine this: you make reservations for a 5-star restaurant. You go out, it's a 5-star steakhouse. You go out, and you're well dressed. You're seated by the hostess, and nice white tablecloth, fine china, nice crystals, and the silverware, and the table is decked out. It's all set. Remember, it is a 5-star restaurant, and you're going out for a nice steak dinner with all the trimmings and everything. So imagine the server shows up, and he brings a basket of breadcrumbs. That's it. No meal, no drinks, no nothing. A basket of breadcrumbs. What would your reaction be? What would you think? You would be aghast. You would probably say, "Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing? Like, what's this?" You would demand an explanation. that behavior, that action would require an explanation. And surely you wouldn't stay there if that's all they had to offer. You would probably just leave, and you would leave and go someplace else. You would be indignant and aghast. Yet in our daily lives, breadcrumbs is something that some people have normalized it without even thinking that way. The way they allow people to treat them. And breadcrumbs doesn't only happen in relationship. It happens in family relationships, yes. It happens in the workplace. It happens at church, in religion. It happens in our society. In our society, it happens in business, with customers, clients, or whatever. We have a tendency to normalize, to accept, and to tolerate, and to allow certain behaviors without questioning it. Sometimes we're treated, like somebody, like I know this person. I'm just going to give you this example, two examples. I know this person, and we are friends, and not close friends, but close enough to, we recently met, I think about a year ago, and we have shared enough. We like each other. It's not like we are calling each other during the week discussing things. No, but we meet and we talk and we laugh, and it is wonderful. I really like her. She really likes me. We really have a good time. And we meet like probably every 2 months or so. We go to a nice restaurant, and we have a meal, we have a drink, and the time is so rich. When that person calls me, well, we don't call, we just text. How is it going? We need to link up again. And I would say, sounds great. When is a good time for you? And they would write back, they would text back and say, or vice versa. If she reaches out to me, I would text back and say, sounds great. I'm available next week, Thursday or Friday from 2 p.m. or whatever, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, from 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., something like that. And then they would text back and say something like, well, I am also available. Let's do it. And the last time I chose the place where we would meet, and the one before she did. So she would say, then I would say, well, let me know where you want to meet, and we'll do it. But whenever we touch base with each other, it's concrete. It is, I want to meet with you. I want us to spend time together. We're going to meet, and we are going to enjoy each other's company and so forth. No fluff, no agenda, no topic. No, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about none of that. We just share that we're going to meet. But that action of texting, of touching base, becomes like solidified. And I like that, because there is, what it tells you is that this person is serious about us meeting. And then I know this other person that wants to get to know me, and vice versa, because we're both businesswomen, and they're always saying, we got to get together, we got to meet for lunch, we got to get, they've been saying this for the last couple of years, and we've never gotten together. Of course, I just shelve it, because I don't, for me, it's not, it's type of a breadcrumb type situation, because they're always saying to me, we have got to get together. And, when I see them, it's not something that I share, simply because I know they're busy. They are busy. They have a really busy schedule. Well, so do I. I have a very active life, and I also am busy. But for the things that I really want to do, I make time for it. it becomes my priority. So I just shelved that. The last time they touched base, they said, when are you available? Are you available? When are you available next week or something like that? And I said, okay, I'm available Tuesday at whatever time. And that's it. I responded to them and have not heard from them since then. That was probably back in February or something like that. And that's okay. That is okay because, I am not going to hold it against them, but neither am I going to reach out to them. Remember, they reach out to me. They reach out to me and say, "Oh, I miss you." And they're always saying, "Oh, I miss you so much." Well, they don't really know me to miss me that much, but that's why I don't do cliches and buzzwords or phrases and things of that nature. And yeah, they reached out to me and they says, "When are you available next week?" And I sent back, after I checked my calendar, I said, "Well, I'm available." And there's always two options, two different days that I try to look and see when it's convenient for me. And but I haven't heard from them. So, if I was waiting for a response, or if I really had the desire to meet this person, and I'm open to it, but first of all, I am not going to hold it against them because I don't really know what's going on in their lives. But it's a form of breadcrumbing. Now, I can say things like, well, that's just the way they are. Then I would be normalizing that behavior. But see, I don't know this person well enough to even determine what the situation is with them and why they are acting that way. They probably decide it's not worth their time to meet with me. And if that's the case, then that's fine. But remember, they're the ones that reach out to me. There's so many things in our lives that we accept. Breadcrumbing it's rarely about the other person. Breadcrumbing is about us, is about what do we tolerate in our lives. What do we lower our expectations, or do we adjust? And sometimes that happens slowly. You don't even realizing that you are adjusting to the whims, to the mood, to the behavior of other people. We just adjust, or we make excuses for them. Well, that's just the way they are, and things of that nature. But keep in mind, breadcrumbing comes in every area of our life, not only in relationships. It comes in form of relationships, family interaction, employers, religion, society, clients, and even ourselves. Sometimes we don't even realize that. Again, we are normalizing that. In terms of let's say your friends, somebody says, "Well, I'm going to text." Yeah, well, they call you and you're not available, or you call them, they're not available, and they say, "I'll call you back," but they never call back. Or sometimes you haven't heard from someone for many months, but then they need something, and then they'll call and say, "How are you doing? First of all, I want to see how you're doing, and to say hi and to see how things are going, and so and so and so." And but they're not calling you for that. They are calling you because they need something. So that is another form of breadcrumbing. Now, in your mind, you can say, "Well, that's just the way they are," or they're busy with the kids, this, that, the other. But now they need something, and they call you. A form of breadcrumbing. The relationship is based on breadcrumbs. So they call you when they have a need, and then expect you to move quickly to help, to assist, to aid in whatever it is that they need. And we have to pay attention to that. We always giving excuses. Well, that's the way they are. They're busy with the kids, or they really appreciate me, but they're not. They don't talk a lot. They're shy. They're not a phone person. Whatever. We make all of these excuses and we normalize it. We accept it as the bare minimum. We normalize, or we adjust ourselves to accept the bare minimum. It's like an employer. Just think of this. You are in the workplace and a position comes up for a management position comes up. You're all here with all your peers, and a management position comes up in your department. You put in for that position and they hired someone else, either from the outside or someone another area of the company. So that person comes in, but then your leader asks you to train the person that they hired in the management position that you applied for. And then they said, well, we want you to train them. And then you're going to ask, well, is there any kind of compensation that I get for training them or anything of that nature? And they said, well, no, we're just going to, because remember, you're going to have to train that person, but at the same time, you're going to have to complete your job. You're going to have to complete the work that you're responsible for. And then, the company may say, well, we'll give you a bonus for that. First of all, the question is, you didn't get hired simply because whatever reason, but you're going to have to train this new manager. That means if you're going to have to train them, that means that you were qualified for that position. So now they want to add additional responsibilities on you, but at the same time, they're not giving you a raise to do it or even a bonus to do it. That is a form of breadcrumbing. And you say, well, I'll just do this or whatever, just because, and sometimes it happens by fear, because you may fear if you don't do it, you may lose your job or something of that nature. But that is a form of breadcrumbing. And that is from an employer. Imagine that, or an employer that is constantly offering you like a raise, and we're gonna really have to give you a raise. We're gonna really have to give you a raise, and they keep up, but it never happens. It's a form of breadcrumbing, and you have to understand what that is and decide what you are going to tolerate, what you are going to, because if you know your value, if you know your contribution to the organization, then you have to approach this not like from a needy position, even though you may need a job. But again, that's why it's important that you understand who you are and know your worth and your value. Because if you're working at an organization and you know the worth and value that you bring to the organization, this is a two-way type relationship. I contribute this and you pay me. When you remove me, that contribution is gone. Yeah, it doesn't say that I cannot be replaced. Well, the same way I can be replaced, so can your employer. So you have to think about yourself, the value that you bring to the organization. Because if you don't see that, if you don't see it that way, my friend, you're going to think, oh, I've got to go to work because I need the money. So you will be just exchanging your time for money. You're not thinking skills, ability, expertise, your talent. You're not thinking in those terms. You're just thinking in terms of time. And then whatever they pay you is what they deem you're worth. Is what they deem you are worth. You are worth this amount of money for your time. In the meantime, because you can show up at a job. As a matter of fact, there was this person that one time in corporate America, and this manager would just show up to her station, her place, and then leave the premise, and then come back like at the end of her shift. It was like a mess, a madness. That was, an unusual situation. But the point is, she was being paid just for the time. But when you are working for someone, it's important that you recognize that you know why you're there. You're not there just to spend 8 hours on the job. No, you are contributing your not only your time, your talent, your ability, your expertise, your knowledge. You are contributing all of that, your creativity. When they say we need to come up with ideas for a new project, to simplify the workflow or to create a situation where we can use this type of technology for something. And if they're asking for ideas and you come up with the ideas, guess what? That is worth something. And you have to understand your contribution and not allow it to be minimized, or for the company to feed you breadcrumb. You come up with something, and you're gonna, if it all depends on the magnitude of the contribution. But sometimes when you come up with something that saves the company money or makes the company more money, sometimes it's rewarded with a bonus or something like that. Why? Because it's your creativity, it's your expertise. You are contributing things that and after a while you can say, well, I don't feel appreciated. And it all depends. Now, if appreciation from your organization is for you is a pat on the back, then that's fine. But if you're saying, I know the value of what I bring, and I think it's time for them to give me a raise. Now, if they recognize that value, then they would probably say, yeah, she's a valuable employee. But if they say, well, no, or whatever, that's just not the way it works. We expect this of you. Then you have the ability to make a decision whether you're going to work for an organization just accepting breadcrumbs besides, for the extra that you do. Because the whole thing is, now, if an organization say, well, we pay you for a think tank to think and to come up with ideas, then of course sometimes you're already in there making six figures or whatever it is. But what you've got to think in those terms. So breadcrumbing from an employer, that's an example. um, Family situation, family dynamic. Sometimes you are the person that everyone comes to. You're the one that's perhaps a little more affluent. And whenever there's a situation, they know they can come to you for help, for resources, assistance, for referrals, whatever it is. And that's the only time they touch base with you. When there's other situations, when there are other gatherings or whatever, they don't think about you, simply because you for whatever reason. But then you're always the one that's there to help. And it's not like you get a call, how are you doing? That's the thing. Just to say, how are you doing? What's going on? Like, how are things? Or even if you're not doing this every day, but every once in a while. Again, it's nurturing relationships. It's nurturing relationships. And it's just kind of weird, because when you don't do that, and then when you have a need for whatever it is, even if it's just a chat, you want to talk to someone about something, it becomes awkward, because you haven't spoken to the person in a while or something. And then we start mitigating excuses, saying, well, that's just, they're just family, and everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. Yeah, everybody. And I don't like to use that term, because busy is not a thing. It is your priorities. And with today, I know a lot of people, like, I don't spend time, like, texting has become the way we communicate with people. It's quick. As a matter of fact, I just got a phone call from my friend, and she was traveling, and she came back in town, and she called, and I was able to, the phone rang, and I couldn't answer it because I was in the middle of something, but I was able to text her a message. So it's so, and when I'm done, I'll call her back, because again, it's somebody that we are constantly in touch and things of that nature. So there's always opportunities to be in touch. Always in touch. Another area in society, let's see here. Work hard on things to improve in career instead of access to opportunity. Sometimes we say things like, well, we just need to be grateful that at least they called. I know a lot of parents say that. There are a lot of parents that I know that they don't hear from their kids. And if it's Mother's Day, they may receive a call, and then the parents will say, well, at least they were thinking about me on Mother's Day or whatever. But in the meantime, you really want to hear from them at least once a week. So they check in on you to see how is mom doing or how is dad doing, but they don't. And you justify the situation. And it's not blaming, it's not condemning, it's not judging, it's just the way it is. And all of it is breadcrumbs. We learn to live with that. We normalize that. And how do you change that? I know for me, because I go about my business and, we are busy doing stuff, my husband and I, we are busy about our own lives. But then sometimes we get a call from someone that, or we may not get a call from someone. And that may be family. And we may say, okay, well, yeah, and you just kind of deal with it. But you don't get sad, or you don't judge them, but you acknowledge that the relationship has been reduced to breadcrumbs. Only when whatever situation. And then you're like, well, that's just the way they are. They don't like to call, they don't text. No, they're just simply not thinking about you. And you may try to do a lot to keep the relationship going. There are a lot of people that do that. They do a lot to keep the relationship going. Why? Because they know it's hanging by a thread, but they don't want it to break, because a lot of things, loneliness may set in or whatever, and you put out more than you're getting. You put out more than you're getting. And then you make excuses for that, for the other person. That happens sometimes in a relationship. That's why, certain relationships, have issues, because if one person is putting out more, the wife, she comes home, there are the kids, the house, they have to cook, they have to clean, they have to get the kids, help them with their homework, and then put them to bed, get them washed up, put them to bed, and so forth. And then the other person, the other spouse, may just be there doing nothing. And then the other spouse may say, well, I need to relax. Well, then you may say, well, what about me? And then we may normalize that's okay. And then we assign it to gender roles. Well, you are this gender, so you are expected to do this, and I'm this gender, I'm expected to do the other. In the meantime, you're both working. And we breadcrumb it. We make that the bare minimum to accept. You, my friend, once you get to know and appreciate and love the person that you are, your personhood, that is something that becomes intolerable. You don't have to beg the attention of anyone. The attention, the love, one girl shared the other day that, she's in this relationship and just meeting this person, and she really liked this person. And I don't know why. Anyway, she just liked this person. So they went out, they had a date, and it was great and so forth. And then the next day, she was fascinated with this person. Well, the next day she texts, or that night, and said, thank you, this was great, whatever. And this person have not responded. and she's just having a cow simply because she just cannot understand what is happening, and she's trying to figure out, did she do something wrong, and start blaming herself, and start affecting her self-esteem, her self-worth, because the person doesn't respond. No, a no response is a response, my friend. It's clear. The message is clear. That person is not into you as you may be into him. It's that clear. It's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. That's just the facts. We need to see it. I did a study the other day on clarity, and clarity is really seeing things as they are and not as you wish them to be. Seeing and understanding things as they really are, and accepting things as they really are, and not the way you want them to be. Clarifies your life. It helps you. Your nervous system. You're not like on edge, and then you govern. That all has to do with self-authorship. You author your feelings, your expectations, your thoughts, all of that. You author all those things in your life, and you don't depend on someone else. You don't depend on someone else to meet that need. And then from that point, you can make a decision. Like for that person, I didn't talk to her personally, but for that person, I would say you need to just go ahead with your life. And even if the person calls them back a week later, they have already, unless that person was comatose in an accident and they were, they lost their mind or whatever, even if they're traveling, if they really enjoyed that, the company of that person, they could have responded to the text. So even if they contacted that person a week later, this person has already been answered by their silence. That's the whole thing. You already got your answer by their silence. You have got clarity. You know how that person thinks or feels about you. And there's nothing they can say unless they were in a coma for 1 week. They have already told you that you are not their priority. And once you understand that, you can go on with your life. And you know what allows you to do that? When you know and you love yourself and you know who you are, and you just know that there's going to be someone out there, I'm assuming this person is single, that's going to not want to let you go. That's going to make it clear whatever their intentions are. And you're going to feel good and chosen, accepted, desired, wanted, and all of that. So don't waste time. Once you know who you are, you're not wasting time waiting for someone to like you or trying to beg for someone's love. You don't need to do any of that. Self-authorship. You decide what works for you. Like I would say, that doesn't work for me. You decide what works for you. And I don't care what kind of relationship you're in, whether it's a relationship with your spouse, with your kids. Sometimes the kids, they want to do things, and if they're still under your covering, your support, under your parenting, then you're the one that make the decision, not them. They don't just go out and have a tattoo done, not if you're 15 or pierce. And I said, because there's this woman that was just, she was having a fit. Her 13-year-old daughter went out and had her nose pierced. Didn't ask for permission, none of that. And the mother, when she came back, it was just a big situation. The mother was not having it. Of course, what do you do now? It's already pierced. I don't think you can just unpierce it. You see? So you are the one that authors situations around you. You're the one that author that so that your nervous system can be regulated, can stay regulated. This way you govern over your peace, your contentment, and all of that. You govern that. You author that. Another area of breadcrumbing is religion, and that's a big one. When we're I don't want to say we because I don't think in those terms, but when religious people are going through some kind of situation, they call it a test, a trial, and all of that. They always say something like, God has a plan. And sometimes it could be some really dire situations. Dire, like, if it's in terms of finances, they don't have the money to meet their mortgage or their rent, forget mortgage, their rent, or even to buy food or medicine and so forth. It says, God has a plan. Why would you accept that kind of breadcrumbing? If in your mind, you are thinking because there's a cliche or a buzz statement that people say God is good all the time. But in the same breath, you can't pay your rent. You can't buy medicine. You can't buy food. You can't feed your children. And then somebody comes along and they give you $100 to buy food. And you say, look at God. God is good. My friend, that is breadcrumbing. You need money for your rent. You need to sort that out. Remember, you have got the ability to critical thinking. You reason, you analyze, you process the situation, and you start self-examination. Does this concept, this teaching applies to me? What is the truth about that? Am I just saying a buzz phrase, God is good all the time? Or what's up? In the meantime, you're thinking, well, I've tithed all my life. And that whole tithe says that if you give it 10% of your earnings, that God would open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that you have no room to contain. Where is that? Where is that? You've got to question that. Otherwise, it becomes breadcrumbing. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Ask and you shall receive. If you do not receive after you ask, it is breadcrumbing. Something is not right. You've got to figure it out. You have to unpack what does that mean so that you can have clarity. Because if you don't, you will be breadcrumbing just by cliches or buzzwords or just statements people make, narrative people share. But it must, the greatest breadcrumbing dynamics that I see is in religion, relationships, religion, and all that. But I see a lot of it in religion because, when someone is on their sick bed and praying for healing and so forth, and then the person just blinks, people would say, oh, look at God. Well, no, you need the person to more than blink. You need the person to open their eyes, get up and be well. Why? Because it says that God is your healer. Be real. You go back, you're returning to your authentic self. And authenticity means to be real, to be genuine, to tell the truth. And you have to start by telling yourself the truth. And if you are afraid, acknowledge the truth that you are afraid to even question. But you know what you would say, which is a form of gaslighting? God has a plan. It's all in God's plan. In the meantime, if I have a situation, I go at it. I try to reason, I try to think, how do we resolve this situation? What do we do? And all of that. What do we do? Where do we go? I remember years ago when I broke my ankle, shattered it, roller skating. And, went to the urgent care. They took x-rays. They said, it is shattered. It's in pieces. My foot was just dangling from my leg like this. It was the most excruciating pain. And after they did the x-ray, they said, you have got to have surgery like within the next couple of days. Otherwise, it's going to set and you're going to have a limp and you're going to be deformed is what they use, another medical term, but that's what they meant. And in my mind, I just knew that just could not happen. And, when I came home, my husband, after they gave the diagnosis and released me, they put one of those temporary casts and so forth. And my husband met me at home, and he just jumped into like mode just like that. I called my PCP, primary care physician, and she would have had to make a referral to a orthopedic doctor. I needed a surgeon. I needed more than a doctor. I needed an orthopedic surgeon. Now, you don't just get in an appointment like, well, my husband didn't care anything about that, what I was doing. He called his doctor, and he has a great relationship with his doctor. And he said, I need your help right now. And his doctor said, because my husband was going to take me to the hospital, ER, so that they could do whatever they need to do. And he said, no, don't take her there because that does not constitute an emergency. Well, for me, it should have been a national holiday because I was in so much pain. So he said, no. So he gave my husband 3 names, orthopedic surgeons. He knows these, in the medical field. He's a internal medicine, whatever, but so he gave us 3 names. So I called one, and they were on vacation with their family. I called another, and they said, send me the report from the ER. It was one of those local ERs that I went to. And I sent him the report and so forth. And he said, are you available? This doctor the second one that I called, well, I didn't call him. I sent an email. And once he asked me to send him the report, I attached the report, and he read and so forth. And he said, are you available tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. that you can meet me at, the hospital that he works? He's he's like a sports orthopedic surgeon, like one of the best in town. And the next day I was in surgery at about 3:00 in the afternoon. But just think of it. I didn't, we don't get religious about anything. We just took action. That's what we did. And as far as the accident, that was me. I was skating. I was just, trying to do some things, and I fell. That's just life. I fell. It wasn't a test. It wasn't a trial. It wasn't no devil, Satan, Lucifer. Nobody did that to me. I simply fell. So I didn't, try to gaslight anyone or blame. No. I had surgery the next day, and the doctor said in 8 weeks, 8 weeks, you'll be able to skate again. I took his word for it. He said, and these are all practical steps. In 8 weeks, you'll be able to skate again. And in 8 weeks, I was, after like 4 weeks, I went into therapy and all of that. And in 8 weeks, I was able to skate again. Now, did I go back? Not yet. But that's just because, my husband is like, he just gets a little concerned. But I've been able to do everything that I did before. As a matter of fact, you would not even know that I've got all these pins in my leg. These screws, I guess is what they're called. The point is, when you subscribe to any kind of, and we're talking about religious breadcrumbs, when people wait and they hope and they plead and they pray, and when things doesn't work out, you say things like, well, God has a plan, or God knows better. If that's religious indoctrination, then if that's the way you think, then it is what it is. For us, we are practical. Something happened. When you know who you are and you have the ability to do things, the capacity, to make a phone call, to make things happen, to call the doctor, to say this, to say that. And that's exactly what we did. My husband didn't care about me calling my PCP, because really, if I had called the referral that my PCP gave me, I would have had to wait the next day to call his office. And you don't just get in. First you have to go in, then they'll have to take their own x-rays, and then they'll have to schedule you for surgery perhaps a month later. With this guy, with this, because it was like a referral from my husband's doctor, and when I wrote, I said, Dr. So-and-so gave us your name and so forth. It was like a thing. And he was just wonderful. But just to think, because in my mind, when they said to me at the first urgent care that I went to, that you've got to have surgery on this, otherwise it's going to set and you're going to have a limp, and in my mind, I just knew that just couldn't happen. Another dynamics in self-authorship. I knew that just could not happen. And so when I came home, we just got into the mode of making things happen. And then fortunately, the doctor, but just the fact, just think of it. Not only did he had to be available to perform surgery at 3:00 the next day, there had to be an operating room that was available. And then you have to have a staff of nurses. And then you have to have an anesthesiologist ready. You have got to have a whole theater of people that are ready to perform surgery. And that happened overnight. When I was talking to this doctor, it was like at midnight. Well, not talking, we were just, email and text. And then he's going to ask me, are you available tomorrow at 2:30? I'm like, available? I'm available now. So because of all that practical motion and critical thinking and the decisions that we made, there was no time for breadcrumbs. Now, I know people that would be praying and hoping and wishing and all of that, and say, there's a lesson to be learned here, and we need a breakthrough, and the devil is a liar and all that. There's just so much breadcrumbing in the religious sphere, just a lot of breadcrumbing. We accept the bare minimum. Because, and I know that because I used to be religious. I used to be a Christian years ago, and followed that doctrine and so forth. But the life that is promised here doesn't say that life is perfect, but it does promise a life of abundance. Why are you still struggling? Why are you still living with the bare minimum when you've got thousands of promises there? We accept that. When we talk about the journey of self-examination, we are examining every area of our lives, and the things that no longer serves us, those are the things that we're going to get rid of. We're going to examine everything. Stuff must work for you. I always say, I'm not here to tell you what to do, what to think, or what to believe. I'm just saying that accepting breadcrumbs from life is not where it will not allow your life to abound, to flourish, for you to thrive. And that's the whole idea of your life, is to thrive in every area of your life. Take on self-authorship so that you can command things to happen in your midst. Command things to happen. And do not accept breadcrumbing. All of that has to do with your identity. We are, you know, breadcrumbs doesn't always look like abuse. It comes in such subtle ways that we, again, the it comes in such subtle ways that the the tendency to accept it becomes so normalized. If the kids don't call or whatever, you say, well, they're just busy. you know they're just busy, and you're the one that's calling all the time. Well, there's no reciprocity there in that relationship. You give more appreciation, more admiration than the other one responds. And all of that, my friend, it is breadcrumbing for you to initiate contact, to be the only one. If you don't call them, they don't call you. Whomever, whether it's family, whether it's whomever, it's breadcrumbing. And you've got to pay attention to that. We have got to pay attention to that. Now that you know, because the whole thing is that once you know something, you cannot unlearn it. You already know it. We already know it. And we know that we're not going to tolerate that in our lives, because what it does, number one, we normalize it, and it leads us to a place to accept the bare minimum. And then you ask, why can't you prosper? Why can't you abound? Why are you not thriving or prospering? Why? Because your mind, the way of thinking, is set up to accept the bare minimum. The bare minimum. And that's not the life that you want. You want to thrive. You ought to be able to put your bills on auto pay or whatever, auto pay, knowing that you've got enough funds every month. Because if you're at a job that's not paying you enough money to meet your needs, then you need to level up and find something else. Not additionally, but if you got, again, don't think in terms of just your time. Think in terms of your skills, your expertise, your talent, your ability, your creativity that you bring to an organization. And you don't, how much they're going to pay you, that's once they understand how you are packaged, then it's a whole different conversation than how much is the position paying. Because when you ask how much is the position paying, that's where the focus lies, only on the salary. No, you're looking at a compensation package because of all the things that you bring. Again, there's so many areas in our lives that we accept breadcrumbs. I'm going to leave you with that so that you can sup on that and start examining every area, every relationship, every connection that you have, every interaction that you have with people, and you start setting standards and boundaries and start honoring your worth, and do not accept breadcrumbs. Question everything, examine everything, and this way you will start building a new identity, or an identity that fits the lifestyle that you desire. Again, I'm going to leave you with that. We meet here every Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you see these icons over here. If you can't meet me here on Thursdays, see the icons over here? Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can pick up the stream 24/7. If you need to touch base with me, the email is there, the email address, info@thecynthialinoxshow.com. You can just shoot me an email, and I'll, whatever it is, whatever question you have, I'll address it. And if I have to create a show with that, then I'll do so. In the meantime, have a fantastic weekend, my friend. Tomorrow is Friday, and then we have the weekend. I will see you next week, same time, same place. Um, and again, give that a lot of thought. What we have shared today on uh, breadcrumbing, and don't be a sucker or victim of breadcrumbing of life. Always seek in terms of abundance and to thrive and to flourish. Okay, I'll see you, amigos. Ciao.